And welcome back to the Wellness Paradox podcast. I'm so grateful that you joined us on this journey towards greater human flourishing. As always, I'm your host, Michael Stack, an exercise physiologist by training and a health entrepreneur and a health educator by trade. And I'm fascinated by a phenomena I call the wellness paradox. This paradox, as I view it, is the trust, communication, and interaction gap between fitness professionals and medical professionals. This podcast is all about closing off that gap by disseminating the latest, most evidence-based, and most engaging information in the health sciences. And to do that in episode 50, I'm joined by Kelsi Ward. And Kelsi is a personal trainer and fitness coach based in Florida, and we connected via Instagram. And the reason that I looked to Kelsi to have this conversation is she's a woman that's growing a fitness coaching business that primarily focuses on empowering other women, but she's doing it with a slightly different approach and perspective. And as we'll talk about in the podcast, she's very intentional about the image and the messaging that she's putting out there, trying to not use her body as her business card, if you will. She's actually trying to cultivate an image that is more safe and inclusive for women that may not have aspirations of being bikini models or losing tons of weight, but are just looking to feel more empowered through their fitness and their health with some guidance from a coach. And we're going to get into a number of issues around that, particularly messaging and marketing and imagery on social media. We're also going to look at a little bit at her program and her fee structure. I think this is an absolutely great podcast for younger female fitness professionals, but I think a lot of lessons also extend to male fitness professionals as well, just being very intentional around your messaging and your imagery through your marketing and through your social media. I think her program structure is instructive in terms of how you can construct a fee-based program that makes sure that it utilizes your time wisely. So lots of lessons in this podcast. It's a pretty wide-ranging conversation with a frontline fitness professional that is really making a difference, and from my perspective, doing it the right way. For more information from this episode, please go to the show notes page by going to wellnessparadoxpod.com/episode 50. Please enjoy this conversation with Kelsi Ward. Today, we're delighted to be joined by Kelsi Ward. Kelsi, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really excited for this discussion. We connected on social media, and then we had a really good conversation around your business, but specifically how you've cultivated your business over time as a female in the fitness and wellness space, which there aren't enough of those in the first place, but B, the ones that do it through a slightly different method than I would say what we talked about. And that's an interesting conversation that we're going to get into today. But before we dive into that, why don't you just give us a little bit of an idea of your background to provide some context for our discussion?
Yeah, so my name is Kelsi Ward, and I'm the coach behind Little Warrior Fitness. Around 25, I fell in love with training and helping other women just find their strength mentally and physically after I hit rock bottom myself. The gym was really the thing that kind of pulled me out of that. So I felt it was my almost obligation to pay it forward to other women and get them into the same thing. So in 2017, I just decided to go for it, established Little Warrior Fitness, and just been kind of rolling from there. I'm also a mom, and I have a firecracker of a child named Emma Grace, and a husband and some dogs. So if I'm not training, I'm exploring with them and just having fun outdoors.
Awesome. And I think what you said there is so common for many people in our industry is they had a life-altering experience with fitness and caused them to want to pay it forward to other people, which I think is always probably the most genuine reason for wanting to do this. So I appreciate you sharing that part of your story. Let's talk a little bit more about Little Warrior Fitness. First, I love the name. The name is definitely catchy. It's cute, but I suspect there's more behind it than just the cuteness of the name. So talk about maybe even why you chose that name, what the mission of the organization is, and kind of who it serves.
Right. So my first name is Kelsi, and it's spelled Kelsi, which is actually from the Gaelic language. It's an old Irish language, and it translates to little warrior. So growing up, my dad always had called me little warrior. And when I was creating my company, that was just the thing that I kept coming back to because I felt like I had that spirit within myself and I used it within myself. That's really what I wanted to translate. Fitness was just the vehicle to do that. So that's where the name Little Warrior Fitness came from. But my mission is really just, I say, to help badass women break through their own boundaries so they can feel in control of their life again. So whether that's becoming consistent in the kitchen through a strong understanding of nutrition and education, or feeling confident in the gym, and actually knowing what they're doing by following a structured plan, probably for the first time,
Yeah, that's awesome. I had no idea that. I mean, I see that the spelling of your name is different than the traditional spelling of Kelsi, but I had no idea that that was from the Gaelic and translates to little warrior.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I love it. Well, so really this conversation is going to less be around your business model per se, and more about your approach. And building a business, regardless of your gender or your industry, is challenging. But in the fitness industry, particularly as a woman, and men to, I think, a lesser extent, you're kind of, and we talked about this when we first chatted, kind of enculturated to use your body as your business card.
Mhm.
And say, hey, like, here's how I look, and you should want to train with me because I look like this. That's not your approach. Your approach is different. So talk about that approach, and teach on it in a way that maybe can help our audience better understand why that might be a better perspective to take.
Yeah, I think my approach is different for a few reasons. My background is in education. So rather than just looking at the aesthetic approach of it, my, core mission is to educate you to how to make these changes sustainable for your lifetime, really. And, bodies change over a lifetime, and you can look at an array of body types. And every one of them can be a healthy body type, but have a different outward appearance. And I never wanted to reinforce that you will have a higher value if you look a certain way, or I am a better coach if I look a certain way, or that I could get you certain results if I looked a certain way. Because what happens if the way that I look isn't appealing to you? If you look at a female and you think, oh, she has too much muscle, she has too much fat, she has too little muscle, she's too skinny, all of these different opinions that people have, you really can't fit, in my opinion, an ideal body into a box. So I wanted to kind of stay away from that, and just kind of share more of the lifestyle habits, routines, choices, and things that people can do in their life to ultimately achieve their goals. Because there's nothing wrong with having an aesthetic-based goal, but I think it can be better served and better paired with achievement-based goals along the way.
Yeah, and I've many follow-ups to kind of build off of that. But I guess the first question I have, because part of this podcast, I always like to bring in the business element, because you've established a successful business. And as I remind people, if you don't make money for what you do, you don't have a job, you have a hobby. So it's important that we figure out a way to monetize what we do. How does what you just said in terms of your approach take shape in your marketing and your messaging that you put out there? Because clearly it's not the standard Instagram post of, you in booty shorts and a sport bra doing an RDL or something like that. It's different, but talk about that a little bit more.
Right. So I think, whenever I take photos or anything, I do try to think of my Instagram and my social media as my storefront. I do train clients in person, but I don't own a brick and mortar facility. So I view my Instagram as not only my business card, but almost my storefront. And how do I want a woman to feel when she walks into that store for the first time? Do I want her to feel intimidated, jealous, unwelcomed, not good enough? Or do I want her to feel like she can relate to someone or identify with them or not be so intimidated? So it sounds silly, but I really do pay attention to the kind of clothes that I'm wearing, in those pictures. The angle of the picture is taken from, like you said, I'm not wearing booty shorts and shooting an RDL from behind and, exposing myself that way, or, taking suggestive or provocative pictures. Because I think if you look a layer deeper into those type of pictures, what they're trying to display is confidence, right? And there's so many different ways that you can convey that feeling of confidence that fitness brings you without it being so sexualized.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of an old, almost outdated way of marketing, really.
But it still happens quite a bit. It's I do agree. I think the body positivity movement and the health at every size movement, I think, helps bring us away from that a little bit, at least I'd hope. What challenges do you find in that, though? Because if I'm to look through fitness Instagrams, and I do look through fitness Instagrams, that's your approach is not the predominant approach I'm seeing. So I have to imagine that there is some challenge associated with the approach to marketing and imagery that you take.
Right. So because I never used that approach, the provocative, suggestive photo approach, I can't really look at my metrics and say, man, business was so much better when I was doing that as opposed to what I'm doing now. But I think the challenge that I face is probably slower growth in terms of vanity metrics. However, I don't think that those vanity metrics are actually what converts to coaching clients. So I might not have as many followers as your typical fitness influencer. I might not get as many likes on a photo or anything like that. So maybe I guess the challenge would be just overall growth. But that wouldn't even be the growth that I would be looking to, get into, because chances are the people who are liking the booty photos and things like that aren't converting into coaching clients. They're probably males, who are just interested in scrolling through Instagram, seeing, an entertaining picture and moving on with their day. They're not there for the content or the coaching or the help.
Yeah, you bring up a really interesting point there. And do you think that, based upon your experience, because of the image that you present in your storefront on social media, as you talked about it, do you feel like the women that come to you have a greater comfort level with you, maybe because they're not as intimidated by your physique?
I think so. And, I think the Instagram stories have actually been the biggest help with that, because like I said, I like to think of my page as my storefront, but I can hop on my Instagram story after a sweaty workout or at 5 a.m. with no makeup, and I'm just like you at that point. That is super relatable. I have a child that maybe kept me up all night. I'm, getting pulled in a million different directions. And it's just a very real, connectable moment. So I think stories have really helped me a lot with that, with being able to connect to people.
Great. Yeah, this is turning into a little bit of a social media discussion, which is great. I always say that I never know the directions that these are going to take on. So let's talk a little bit more about that. We'll continue to kind of pull on that thread. Is that your primary marketing modality? Like, is that how you're primarily acquiring your clients? And if so, I guess maybe just take us under the hood a little bit of that process as to how you acquire clients in your business.
Yeah, primarily through Instagram. It's funny, I got away from Facebook for a long time, almost to the point where I'm not even sure how to use Facebook effectively at this point. So I'm actually trying to dip my toes back into Facebook. I'm finding that Facebook helps a lot more with local growth. because I do train clients in person as well. So, word of mouth, I think, is a lot easier to spread locally on Facebook. But as far as my online portion of my business, I do primarily use Instagram. So, a lot of times I will, I do try to reach out to every single new follower that I can, and just introduce myself and really make that connection. Because that's what social media to me is about. It's about being social, and it's a social network. So I want to be able to talk to these people and converse with them rather than just constantly spit my content at them and hope that something lands. So really just connecting with people as they follow me, getting to know more about them, even if it's connecting through like, oh, I don't know, as a mom, like I fold all the laundry too, and whatever it might be. And then, I also have an email list that I use. So I like to try to deliver some value to them specifically through that, different content there. So yeah, Facebook, Instagram, email, that's my primary marketing online.
Now, you said something there that I think is important to highlight, and it's definitely came up in our conversations around marketing and acquisition before on the podcast, is you're trying to provide some value. Talk a little bit more about why that's important, because it seems like at least a lot of the emails that I get are, hey, buy this thing from me, buy that thing from me, give me money for this or that. That's not what you said right there.
Right. So I think that there has to be a value exchange in order for you to feel like, maybe when you come to my Instagram, that's where you get to know me and like me. But when I can provide you something of value directly, that's when you start to trust me. So it's building that know, like, and trust with my clients and potential customers, and exchanging something of value to say like, look, this is what I can hand you for free. What would happen if, you got even more value and signed up for coaching or, something like that, just to kind of get them comfortable with the idea that I can walk the walk, and deliver this for free. So what else can they get if they chose to invest in themselves even more?
Yeah, I like that framework, and we've used that framework before on the podcast, the know, like, and trust. And it seems like the way you operationalize that framework is, Instagram is, first they know about you, then they get to see you a little more, just being real, like you said, 5 a.m. after being up all night, no makeup. So then they kind of like you because they can relate to you, and then you provide them the content, which then builds value and trust in you, and that eventually leads to that conversion. It's interesting because I think so many people try to jump to the conversion so quickly that they barely know the person. They certainly don't trust the person, and the person hasn't built the value. And then people wonder why they're not able to convert prospects into sales.
Right. It's really a long game. And like I said, I reach out to any new follower that I get and introduce myself. And through those conversations, a lot of times I will be like sending them free resources. Oh, here's a nutrition guide that I like to use with my clients. Here's, a training plan that I like to use sometimes, or whatever it might be. And is that a immediate turnaround or immediate client conversion? Probably not, but they've gotten that value of, wow, this coach just gave me an ebook, a whole ebook for free. And, maybe they use that for a month or two and they decide, I'm going to take it one step further and I'm going to get even more value by investing in myself that way. So yeah, it's really just exchanging and helping people. I think sometimes, like you said, we do have to make money. Otherwise it's a hobby. But I think sometimes we can lose sight of the fact of, we got in this to help people.
Yeah, indeed. Now, you mentioned that you'll provide resources. You said ebooks and programs. Are these resources you're creating yourself, or just resources that you find useful? What's kind of the mix of internally created collateral and resources versus external resources that you just reuse?
So yeah, I create all of my own resources. I can't think of, externally, I might send them like supplement info from the supplement company that I'm an ambassador for. So maybe it's like oh, you like this protein, here's a quick recipe that they created. So maybe that would be an external source. But my three pillars, like many fitness programs, are fitness, so the training side, nutrition, and mindset. So I created 3 ebooks for each one of those things. So there's a mindset ebook, a training ebook, and a nutrition ebook, so that all of my clients have resources. Because while I do coach them, I want them to build that autonomy and not have to be like messaging me, I'm at Starbucks, what do I order? And that freak out, that, kind of using your coach as a crutch instead of learning everything that they need to be sustainable. So I do create a lot of my own resources, and it's one of those things that just kind of continues to evolve over time as I see the need and I see the gap that needs to be filled. So yeah, who knows? I mean, I don't know what else I'll create, but I really enjoy it.
If I'm somebody that's listening to this and I'm thinking, man, Kelsi, these resources sound like a lot of work to create. And they are, even if you love creating them, they're a lot of work to create, but you get to use them indefinitely, right? Like once the resource is in place, you could use it 50, 100, 300 times, and it's always there for you. So just speak to the person out there that's saying, man, I don't know, seems like a lot of work.
It absolutely is a lot of work, but I would challenge them to, think like, how many times am I answering the same question?
Yeah.
Because that's also a lot of work. And that, like I said, filling that gap and filling that need is where all of my resources were born from. I started realizing like, wow, I'm answering the same nutrition question over and over, or like, wow, I'm starting to see the same pattern in the mindset of all of my clients. And I think the more you niche down, the more you can start to define those patterns and see those patterns and create your resources to help them even more. So I would challenge them with, start to look at these patterns that you see within your clients and within your business and fill that gap. That way, it actually, in the end, takes a little more work off you, because you're not constantly answering the same question on repeat.
I'd like to take a quick break from today's episode to tell you more about one of our sponsors. As all of you are well aware, the COVID-19 pandemic has been absolutely devastating for the fitness industry, with upwards of 1/3 of our clubs closing nationally on a permanent basis. One of the few stabilizing forces during this very tumultuous period of time has been IHRSA, the Global Trade Association for the Health and Fitness Industry. On my crusade to make fitness professionals part of our healthcare continuum, the work that IHRSA is doing is absolutely vital. They provide advocacy and lobbying support at both the federal and the state level. They support state alliances in many ways, and they also provide resources and best practices to club owners, operators, and individual fitness professionals. Indeed, if we are truly going to become part of the healthcare continuum, we must speak with one unified voice. We must have best practices that we implement, and we must come together as an industry to ensure the public, the medical community, and lawmakers hear our message loud and clear, that movement is medicine and it is essential. That is the work that IHRSA is doing. They've recently revamped their membership structure, allowing large clubs, small clubs, boutiques, and individual professionals to join the organization for an appropriate price that allows them to have access to all of these many great resources and allows us to unify and amplify our voice as an industry. For more information on the amazing work that IHRSA is doing, go to their website, IHRSA.org. That's IHRSA.org, IHRSA.org, to look in a little bit further into the work IHRSA is doing to unify our industry, to move us closer to being a part of that healthcare continuum. Now back to today's episode. Yeah, and you said it, and I feel like it should be every worst coach's nightmare to have every client, when they're out at the restaurant or they're out at Starbucks, texting you saying, hey, what do I do? What do I do? So part of it's providing the resources, but as you said, a great deal of it is just fostering that autonomy through the resources that you provide them with. So Let's talk a little bit under the hood of how you work with clients. I'm always fascinated to talk with different fitness professionals and coaches about their actual, kind of programming and coaching philosophy. Clearly, you work with a lot of women. Your messaging is unique and it's different. I'm sure that attracts a wide variety of goals. But walk us through the process. What happens when a new client comes to you? How do you handle onboarding? What's progression look like? Just kind of on a very broad level, walk us through that.
Yeah, so I'll just go through one of my most recent transformation examples. She has been with me for over a year, and she started off on a home-based program. Mm-hmm. She's never been in the gym before in her life. So we started her 12 weeks. Those 12 weeks were broken down into 3 phases of training, just to kind of get her feet wet the first 4 weeks, and then progress, through the next 2 phases of at-home training. Well, finally, because of that confidence that she built within her training, she was like, I think I'm ready to try this in the gym. So then we onboarded her into a personal training package. So she was coming twice a week. And then again, took that next step. Confidence started building. She's starting to feel like, I got this. She decreased her training frequency with me down to once a week. And then now is completely independent. And I know that sounds a little bit backwards of like, but didn't you lose a client? My whole goal is not to keep a client forever. My goal is to empower you and educate you to, carry this out for yourself. And it's funny because there was another trainer one day when I was training her, and he was like, I've seen you in the gym before. And she's like, she's strong. She is lifting heavy. She's gained so much strength in the past year. And she is like adamant on telling him, I've never been in a gym before. You've never seen me. This is literally my first time ever being in a gym. So seeing that client life cycle go from barely being able to do at-home workouts to getting into the gym with a trainer, gaining so much strength, and now carrying it out completely on her own. And she sends me stuff, about like what she's doing still. And I love seeing that process. So that would be, I guess, a client life cycle kind of on the training side of it. But with nutrition, it's so much more nuanced because I do both. Nutrition is a lot more nuanced because there's a lot of, especially with women, dieting history. A lot of inaccurate dieting history, where they think they've been in a deficit for a long time, but they're not losing weight. So then they're clearly not in a deficit because maybe they're starving themselves Monday through Friday and binging on the weekends, or just, a lot of yo-yo dieting in the past. So I like to, if they're in a healthy calorie range, I like to spend about 6 to 12 weeks dieting them until they've gotten to their goal, or they've gotten to a place where we don't want to take calories any lower or bring training any higher. From there, either at that 6 to 12 week mark, we would start reversing them back up and bringing their calories back up. Now, it depends. If somebody's got 12 to 15 pounds to lose, we can probably knock that out in 12 weeks and, reverse and send you on your way. But if you've got 30, 50, 100 pounds to lose, it's going to take a couple cycles of that, of dropping your calories back down, and then bringing them back up just to maintain a healthy metabolism.
Yeah, that's interesting. I love how you talked about that transformation story, and you used the word transformation, and you talked about confidence, and you talked about strength, but nowhere in that story was you talking about body composition or weight or anything like that. And it's really refreshing to hear a professional in our field refer to transformation in that context, because that is the most profound transformation you could give someone, the confidence to be able to do this on their own when they started with you.
Right. And I can assure you, she's had quite the transformation.
Yeah.
Within all of those achievements too.
Right. Talk a little bit about your structure from a fee perspective to your training? Everyone understands, hey, when you're doing one-on-one training in a gym, well, that's simple. You charge for the hour of your time and you have packages and stuff like that. But it sounds like you're doing some virtual coaching and things like that. How do you structure that typically?
Structure the pricing or
how do you structure the pricing? Because now obviously virtual training has exploded recently, and some people do a monthly coaching fee, other people do it per session. I'm just curious as to how you found the most effective way to handle the virtual side of your coaching business as opposed to the in-gym side, or maybe they're the same.
Yeah, so for online, I have 12-week packages and 24-week packages. I think for the person that is signing up for the first time, 12 weeks is a realistic and comfortable place for them to begin. I don't do 4 weeks. It takes 4 weeks just to learn, and to kind of get into your groove with everything. I really find it does. It takes the first 4 weeks to really get your footing. And then the next 4 to 8 weeks, that's when you start to get in your groove and you really start, to pick up momentum and see results. But I do 12-week packages or 24-week packages. I don't do anything by the month because I think it's too short of a time period to see sustainable changes. This is not like an extreme weight loss challenge type thing. So you can do the training and nutrition total package, or you can do nutrition only, because I do find a lot of clients who they're in love with doing CrossFit and they don't want to give that up in order to work with somebody on their nutrition. So it's either training and nutrition or nutrition only, but it's always 12 to 24 weeks at a time.
Great. And you charge a different price point for training and nutrition versus just nutrition.
Correct.
Yeah. And I think that's so important. And the couple of things I want to point out, because I think it's a very, very good business lesson, is first thing you said is, 4 weeks goes by like this when you're meeting a new client. I mean, it's like you just barely have learned them. They've barely learned you in 4 weeks. Mm-hmm. Secondly, and I think this is where fitness professionals shortchange themselves quite a bit, is that they will help a client with nutrition. And as just to be clear, as we're talking about nutrition here for everyone that's listening, we're talking about nutrition within our scope of practice as a fitness professional. Obviously, when people have eating disorders or medical issues, that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about healthy eating principles and calorie management and things like that. But so often, fitness professionals don't charge for that time. And it almost becomes all consuming and they really lose a lot of money. So I'm curious, did you learn that lesson the hard way initially, or have you always charged for both?
Yes, I learned it the hard way for sure.
Yeah.
And I also learned, when I first started, I think so many trainers, when they first begin, they want to help for free. They just think this is like almost like a rite of passage. Like I just have to start helping people for free so I can gather some transformations. And I stopped doing that. And I stopped doing that very confidently after, my first few months, because I quickly realized that if you give somebody a service such as this for free, they are not as invested. They do not have skin in the game. And they need something to hold themselves accountable. Because when you're getting something for free, it's very easy just to walk away from it if you're the one putting in the effort. We're asking them to do half of the work. We're guiding them through it, but at the end of the day, they're in charge of doing that work. So free was off the table very quickly. And I did that not even for myself, but for the client. Mm-hmm. They deserve to earn those results. And now I'm kind of in a phase of my business too, where I am increasing prices because I was seeing the same thing. Like it was not enough of an investment for them to stick with it, because it's easy. If they price it out in their head and they think, well, it's just $25 a week, who cares? I'll throw that $25 away. Bump that up to $75 a week, or, whatever it is, however they budgeted, mm-hmm. That out in their mind. They're a little more likely to stick to it. So the price, there's a difference I've found between price and value. If you're just looking at numbers, that's the price. If you're looking at value, that is so dependent on the person and what they want to pull from the program.
Yeah, you absolutely nailed it. I think that is such an important lesson, particularly for young fitness professionals that, as you say, kind of go through that sacrificial rite of passage of like, hey, I just need to give a bunch of stuff away for free. Yes, free means that no one's paying anything for it, but it also means that there's not a lot of associated value with it if you utilize it or if you don't. So I think that that's spot on. I could go a lot of different directions, but got to be respectful of your time and our audience's time. So I do want to start bringing us to a close here. But before I do that and kind of get into a couple of closing questions, I'm always intrigued to ask successful female professionals in our industry kind of this question. And that's, diversity and inclusivity are important in every industry. The fitness industry has tended to be very male dominated for decades. Everything from the professionals we see to the people in ads to certainly the C-suites of some of the larger companies. From your perspective as a female professional, why is it so important that we have more female professionals and leaders in fitness?
I think it's important to create connection, create a safe space for women to feel comfortable, more women to feel comfortable coming into the gym. I think a lot of women, when they think like personal trainer, they think like this big bodybuilder or, this like boot camp style coach that's going to yell at them. And for a woman who might be overweight and insecure, that can be super intimidating. So I think the more females that we can get into the space, the more we can lower that barrier of entry for other females and males too. But my experience, is primarily females. I think it just lowers the barrier of entry and it kind of opens that door. I have never felt limited by, being a female. There's lots of times where I look around and I'm like, I'm the only girl in here. That's weird. Like I didn't notice it, but if I stop and look around, I'm surrounded by 9 other males. Where are all the females? Let's get them in here, So I think that we still have a ways to go. I wish it didn't carry so much weight. I wish it wasn't such a thing to be surprised by a good female trainer. I wish it wasn't a surprise to see a female trainer who's smart and athletic and all of these things. I wish it was just same as a male, but
yeah, it's a reality. And I'm sure there's lots, if you want to diagnose the root cause, I'm sure that becomes complex, but I think what you said there that's most important is it is the connection element and it is the relatability. I've always found it very ironic that our industry, particularly personal training and a lot of boutique fitness, maybe set aside CrossFit, but boutique outside of CrossFit, serves women. But most of the people that are making the decisions and doing the training are men, which seems a little bit backwards to me. So I definitely think the connection and the relatability are something that is critical. As a man, I'm never going to know what it's like to have to, get up and nurse a baby at like 4 o'clock in the morning. That's just not something I'm ever going to understand. So I think you bring up some very, very important points there. And I think the last point I'll make before we move on is I think the example that you're setting by, yes, you're a female professional that's obviously educated and doing great things, but you're doing it, to bring it back full circle to what we talked about initially, you're doing it in a way that doesn't perpetuate the traditional stereotype of the just really, really good looking and overly sexualized female fitness professional. I think that lends a lot more credibility to it. So I think not only do we need more females, but we need more females doing it the right way.
Well, yeah, and it does take a little more work, to think a little bit more about the clothes that you're putting on your body or the way that you're training or the resources you're providing. It does take more work for sure, but I think it also creates more longevity in the end.
Yeah, so it's a lot of intentionality behind what you do. And I think that's an important take home. Where can people go if they want to find out more about all the things you're doing? Where's the best place to go?
So Instagram, really, like I said, I'm like a cave woman on Facebook. I'm not really sure how to use it, but Little Warrior Fitness on Instagram. Little Warrior Fitness is also my website. So littlewarriorfitness.com. And same thing with my email, littlewarriorfitness@gmail.com. So That's where I'm at pretty much on everything. Search
Perfect.
me and you'll find it.
Yeah. And Kelsi put some great stuff out on Instagram. I follow her on Instagram. I'm pretty sure that's how we connected. Sometimes I find it hard to remember how I end up connecting with people, but I will put all that in the show notes page so everyone has a chance to link up to that and check you out. Before I let you go, I need to ask the question that I always end the podcast on, because it's the thesis behind this podcast. And it's that there's a trust, communication, and interaction gap between fitness professionals and medical professionals. And it's kind of my lifelong crusade to close off that gap. From your perspective, as you sit here in the industry, what do you think is the one piece of advice you'd give other fitness professionals to close off that gap?
Another fitness professional to close off that gap. I would say make yourself available and provide a good service. There is no lack of service out there. There's no lack of resources out there. There's lack of quality. So I would say to operate within your scope, obviously, but to provide the best level of service and accountability and coaching you can for your clients.
I love it. Kelsi Ward, thank you so much for joining us on the Wellness Paradox.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Kelsi as much as I did. If you found it insightful and valuable, please share with your friends and colleagues. These shares really do make a difference for us. Any information that we'd like to share with you can be found on the show notes page by going to wellnessparadoxpod.com/episode 50. Please be on the lookout for next week's episode when it drops on Wednesday. And if you have a moment, please leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Those reviews make a massive difference for us. Until we chat again next week, please be well.